It's recording, yes. Okay, good morning, everyone.
Afternoon.
Good heavens, that's telling. Shall I stop and start again? Good afternoon, yes. All right, how can I help you? Are there questions that you have?
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay. What would you think would be helpful in this session then? Apart from hearing each other and touching base.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not where I would have liked to be with my work.
Okay.
So I'm just catching up on reading and came on to hear what everyone has to say, really.
Okay, that's fine, Dina. That's fine.
So,
maybe
yeah.
I can try and see if there's something we can work on together. Fidosa, do you have a question? Or
Hello.
Hello, Fidosa. How are you?
Hi, Nina. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're keeping safe and well.
Well, good. That's very good. And I'm glad that you guys seem to be well and safe as well. That's very encouraging. Do you have any queries?
Yeah, I actually had a few questions because I've already done this module before, and I've seen my submissions from before and the comments, and I was going through what I could do. I was wondering if I could use the same article I've used before.
Yeah.
Or because it's the same assignment, as in very similar assignment.
Okay, so if I may, just by way of example, say that any resubmission that you have, it's fine to use material that you have referred to before, as long as this time you're taking on board the feedback and you're trying to present and submit something different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
that has substantially improved. Let's put it that way.
All right, okay.
There's something complete, so an improvement of what you have put in before. And that's fine if you use the same article.
All right, okay.
Was the feedback helpful?
Yeah, it was very helpful. Thank you.
Well, that's good to know. And if you want me to look at an outline, excuse my coffee. If you want me to look at an outline, then I'm happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Can I email you something before the end of this week?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm hoping to email you something maybe tomorrow.
All right. I will look out for your email. That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Would it be helpful if I download? I'm just going to try and do something while I ask Cynthia how she's doing, and I am listening.
Well, I don't have any questions now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going over the feedback that you gave me from the email.
Okay, good. Yeah. And was it helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got two assignments for this module, haven't we?
Yeah.
Okay. And the first one looks at an example that you can use from existing examples on Moodle. So if you're stuck for ideas, you can see, you know, what's there on Moodle that might help you. And I think last time we did actually go over some slides to help think about how you would analyze those particular examples and draw from the literature to support how you respond. So for example, does anyone want to give an example of what they're looking at, or shall I use an example from Moodle? I take that quiet.
Sorry, you can use one from Moodle.
Okay, so let me just quickly try and find, that's article bank 4, folders assignments for supporting case studies. There we go. So it's a folder there. And I'm going to look at possible links that might take us to, well, there's something on teaching British values, we can look at that.
Yeah.
So that's quite a topical area that has a lot of literature, but there's also something there in terms of how we might look at it from an ethical point of view, given the key text that we have. So why is it seen in the article that you're looking at that British values is something important that should be taught in schools? Do you see that you have to ask questions and find what the key points are that are making a case for what's being discussed? So let me try and sort of see if I can go in there. All right, so let me try. It's not quite an article. That's what I'm trying to see. There isn't a newspaper press release there that we could use from the Department of Education, or so I'll show you what I'm looking at. That might help. And if this doesn't help, I can find another example. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So you might want to look at this site and find where you can focus more on a particular story, a particular example, and I'm sort of rolling my cursor on something here that says British values training for primary schools. Or we could look at the press release from 2014 from the Department of Education about how all schools are told that they must promote British values. And the fact that it suggests that they have to do this, right, that they're required to teach British values, poses the question of why that should be and how they can go about doing that. What are the implications for that? Does that make sense? So I think what I want to do is sort of look at this article that was released in November on 2014. And it says what the Department of Education are giving guidance on. So you need to go through the article and see what it is being said, and the impact of that. So the purpose of this is to extend more than just trying to have respect for other people's values, but something else is being suggested here, right? And here is something else that's been quoted of Lord Nash. Can you see what I'm highlighting?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is this helping others, by the way, in the group?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes,
So
thank you.
this is where you're going to tease out, looking at any article that you're looking to analyze for your analytical commentary number 1. You want to look at the article, read it through once so that you are clear about what is being said, and then go through it again and highlight what are the key points that you are taking away from the article that says that this has a sort of moral imperative. In other words, that there's a position here that suggests that this has to be done, that there's an importance given to something. And if there's an importance given to something, why is it important? And how is it going to be proposed to be implemented? If you can find those answers, then you will raise questions of, well, what does that mean? And how does that relate to the theory that I've been looking at from the key text? This way you'll be able to analyze, you know, the impact of how decision makers can influence the way that people experience their education and what kind of persons we're expected to be as a result. And you might want to then position yourself and see, well, if I take this from a perspective of, you know, education having certain principles that allow people freedoms, and that people should be able to enjoy their lives free of being, you know, having other values imposed upon them, where does that sort of take me? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't rehearsed this. I'm just trying to work with you, sort of testing out how you would approach a story that you can find and link to the literature. So you can think about different approaches from Schaefer-Landau, thinking about ethical aspects that have implications for teachers in education, right? Because if this is something that has to be taught, well, what does it mean for the people who have to teach it?
Yeah.
And what are the dilemmas that are presented for those in teaching in terms of people who may not hold to those values that you've been told you must, you know,
Believe or uphold to.
Yes, exactly. Educate young children to believe in. Okay, so there are conflicts here potentially. And those reasons for conflicts are because the dilemma of having different value systems that you're trying to accommodate. And as a professional, that has certain implications. Not to mention how appropriate it might be, or the sensitivity or the need for being appropriate, age appropriate as it were, and what that suggests, given that when children are young, families are also involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are all sorts of things that you can tease out of the story that you are looking at and relating to, and then try to link it to literature. Like we have, there's some reading Kenneth Strike on the ethics of teaching. You have, although it's not online, which is a bit of a disadvantage, so I won't mention Levinson, because she has case studies in the classroom that she refers to in the US. Mentioning the US, be mindful of the literature that you look at and how you might relate it to the British context if you are drawing from something that is discussing another context. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that all right for you, Cynthia?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Fidosa?
Yes, Nina, thank you. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. And Khadija, you still there? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, does this help? Have a look at the reading list. I have, Fidosa, you have access to the autumn module, and
Yeah.
I will double check, because what I did, unless you have a copy of the Schaefer-Landau, do you?
Oh yeah, I think I might have downloaded like a PDF or something.
Yes, I did scan.
Hello?
The chapters and upload them, but I'll double check on the autumn module to make sure that you've got exactly the same as the spring module.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that you're not disadvantaged that way. Because I did actually scan a few chapters and put them online, because I knew that the access to the text might be limited. Okay. Right. Note to self. I shall do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to have a look at another example? Would that help? Or would you like to move on to something else?
I think maybe this, well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think I'm all right with the first one.
First one, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I haven't really looked at the second one, but I'm okay with the first one.
Okay, so shall we have a look at the second one then?
Yes.
Yeah?
Would that help?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the second assignment, what's the task?
So it's a article, a journal article.
Yeah. Okay. So I've put a link on Tallis, an article bank for second assignments, critical commentary. So let me see what that brings up. What you can do, does bring something up, that's good. Okay, I've put a chapter there from a journal, Aristotle's Conception of Practical Wisdom and What It Means for Moral Education in Schools. Is that a good example to put up without without having to read it all right now? But let me just see if I can. Okay, so what I need to try and do, bear with me while I'm a little bit slow on the technology. And that might be, I mean, the Journal of Philosophy for Education has quite a lot of articles, and they might be more difficult than easy to read. So that's something to bear in mind, what kind of article you want to look at. I need to try and download it while I'm speaking, so multitasking is becoming a challenge for me, but bear with me. The other thing that you might want to do, which could be also very helpful, is look at chapters from Schaefer-Landau. That is also an alternative that could help you. And that way, what you're doing is saying what you've understood from that chapter and what it implies when you want to think about putting those ideas into practice in education. And that's essentially what you're doing for the second assignment. I'll try and see if I can find another article at the moment, because that one's been quite slow. So let me see what I can do here. There are loads of articles. If you scroll down Moodle, you can see lots of articles, examples of issues in education that you can discuss and relate to the literature. So if you don't like what's in the folder, you can certainly scroll down on Moodle and find examples that might be helpful for you. And I would recommend that. So there's lots of resource lists, and it's really trying to choose one. And I'm trying to find one that is going to be manageable within the time that we have. Okay, so let's have a look at, well, let's have a go at Curran. Let's see what he helps us. This is a pamphlet, and it's 44 pages long. So you might want to look at that. It's not so deep. Can you see it? Can you see it? Or have I not shared it? Okay, I need to share it. Hold on a moment. The joys of technology as you are teaching or trying to support students. And I need to go back. I shouldn't give a commentary, really. There we go. Now, can we see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Impact, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this looks at a whole discussion about character education, right? Why character education? It might be a very helpful resource for you to have as a secondary reading to support analysis of another article, to bring in more arguments. So that's something else that you should be using your resource list for, that you can help with building up your discussion and your analysis of why you might hold a particular view in response to what the authors are claiming and the arguments that they're presenting. So bringing in counter arguments will be helpful from secondary sources. And so this may be a very useful secondary source if this is an area that you want to look at. And you can link this to Schaefer-Landau chapter. Ooh.
Sorry, it's me.
No, that's okay.
I was just connecting to my laptop instead of my phone.
Oh, good thinking. Okay. So there's quite a lot of work that's been written on character education, and we have looked at this. but if you think about virtue ethics, and the chapter in Schaefer-Landau about virtue ethics, that helps you to link to this particular text and other authors who discuss the value or the reservations of teaching character education. Okay. And there's links to policy here, so it's trying to contextualize, and you'll see, as in most articles, the main discussion is contextualized within the discourse of what's happening at the moment, what's currently being discussed, how has it come about, and what the aims are for raising certain questions or points of view in response to what is happening. So this is where the pamphlet is very relevant, okay? And it's contextualizing it at the beginning. Oh, look, character, context, and judgment. What you might want to do is take, not the whole pamphlet if you're not up for it, but take a section from it and gauge with what Curran is saying about notions of generosity and courage and loyalty, as you see in that section here at the side, okay? As you're reading, what you want to be doing is see how he makes a case for his position and how he supports his position from his reading of other literature. Does this help?
Yeah.
If there's anything if anything does come to mind, just jump in, okay? So the idea with the second assignment, second component, is for you to choose an article that addresses an educational issue or concern and highlights certain concerns, reservations, or maybe advocates for certain position, and how they bring in the arguments that help to justify the positions that they're making. All right? So that's how they're making a case, and that's what you will be doing in response. Okay? You will have done that for the first assignment when you look at an example and you're drawing from literature to help support your response to what is happening and why it's been brought to the public sort of sphere, to everyone's attention, why it's newsworthy, as it were, why it's important, and then how you can make a case for your responses based on your reading. And the second part is where you are looking at principled views from an ethical perspective, from ethical theory. This is where you've got to use your reading from, and I would suggest you go to Schaefer-Landau and other readings from the resource list to help support what it is that is important, okay? And what are the key positions that are argued from particular ethical frameworks. So if it is that, for example, that we're looking from a kind of deontological perspective, or if it's what we're worried about is that we're teaching young children or young people in schools ways of understanding themselves and how they relate to others by taking principled positions of knowing how to make decisions, how to judge situations and respond to situations by acting on them and seeing that they have to be responsible for the consequences of those actions. And that is a particular theoretical framework, right? So if you hold that position, that it's really important to be moral agents and make moral decisions and to act responsibly and then take the consequences of those actions, and that is how you are responsible for your decision making, that is a process that if you want to introduce that in schools, you want to say, well, how do I start that process in young children's thinking? Yeah? So you would introduce those as an example in response to trying to support a theoretical framework. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this complicated?
A little.
A little. Be honest, that's fine. Because I can hear myself, and then when I hear myself and no one else, it does raise questions always, as to just checking to make sure it's clear. So the way that it helps, and another way of looking at this is, in what ways does Curran's section on character, and let's see what this, on context and judgment, right, help us to understand what we can look at in Schaefer-Landau about the ideas within theoretical frameworks about what is good character. And who's talked about good character? Do you remember? Who talks about character education?
Virtue ethics, is it?
That's right. Okay, so you can look at that section on virtue ethics, and that would be very helpful to make those links. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So essentially, for both of the assignments, we could use your table to sort of pick out the key points and the main points from both the article and the journal, or the media article that we look at for the assignment 1.
Yes.
And the journal article that we look at for assignment 2.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's just the text that you're looking at, one will be an academic source, another will be a source from the media.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you for reminding me. Last session, I put together a table. So if you look at the last Zoom session, you will see, if you weren't there, and for anyone who's listening in on this session afterwards, have a look at the previous week where I had a table. And you can, as Dina has said, apply that to both assignments in how you break down the substance of what you're looking at and trying to make links then to your key text and other sources that you've read. Okay, so how can you map what you're reading to theory is another way of putting it. Gosh, that was more succinct, wasn't it? Right? So try to map the ideas that you find in the article to the theory that is within the body of the literature that we've looked at.
Yeah.
So you mention Schaefer-Landau because that's a key text. He's trying to explain ethical theory in a more condensed and concise way. And you can read up on other articles and handbooks to ethical theory and moral philosophy. If you look at the Stanford Encyclopedia as well, which is online, that might be helpful for you in terms of seeing first and secondary sources. Aristotle talks about character as well. So there are lots of different sources that you can draw on that discuss a framework. So it is about what, it is also important to sort of think about the principles that are involved, how the individual is seen, okay? And what are the values that are informing that framework?
Yeah.
That govern, you know, that it's sort of thinking about the values that we think are important and how that, in a way, governs our decision making and the actions that we take, the way that we live our lives and the way that we're encouraged to live our lives in the classroom. So think about examples that you might be able to give as well that help to support your discussion. And that's another way of showing that you've actually synthesized. In other words, you've understood what you've read and you can relate it to examples and be able to engage more with what are the issues then that this presents to teachers and parents and children in a classroom or a school setting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of working from another direction. Yeah?
Yeah.
So the first instance, you're looking at the sort of particular example and trying to draw out what the issues are and relating it to theory. In the second assignment, what you're doing is looking at the academic response to the theory and trying to relate it to examples that will help you to present your views, your arguments in response.
Mm.
Do we have questions, or does that help to explain?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Go ahead.
confirm, or not confirm, but just to make sure. So what I've done, I basically wrote a list of the different theories or approaches that we went over in class.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing any. So when I do my reading of the actual article or whatever I'm going to use, I can refer it back to those theories. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you don't need to have all theories. You can have one.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that I had all of them that we spoke about.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yes, that's fine. So if you look at the different week headings, then there are certainly, and also the chapters that I've uploaded at the bottom, which is session 10. It's labeled as session 10. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you scroll down, you'll see the folder with the scanned readings.
Yeah.
Schaefer Landau. If I open that up, you could look, actually for the second assignment, you could look at any one of those.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So if you look at any one of those, and there are chapters that relate to the sessions that we have looked at, different topics, you can take one of those chapters and identify what the principles are, what the key framework is for the arguments that are presented.
Okay.
Now, I've
Yeah.
actually got one of Levinson's chapters there, right? And that's an example of practice. So you might want to look at that as a secondary reading that might help to support an article or an example that you're looking at, or you might want to use it as a secondary reading to help support some of the theoretical frameworks from the other chapters that you want to focus on as part of your second assignment. Okay?
Yeah.
So for this one on character, you could look at, you can see virtue ethics is scanned there. Is happiness all that matters? You can look at that chapter, because that's the sort of the sort of hedonistic type of approach, and you would look and see what it is that hedonism promotes. What are the key ideas, the principles that guide the frameworks of wanting to imagine a school where those were the main principles, and how would you see it working? Is it a framework that could help support a school to function well? And would you imagine that young people could be better off having gone to a school where those are the principles that guide the framework of what happens within that school? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So you go on. Did you want to say something? Did someone want to say something? I've also introduced I've also included the introduction, that's what I meant to say, from Schaefer Landau, and that might be a helpful way of guiding you in terms of your approach to looking at the particular article or chapter that you want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Khadija?
Yeah.
Are you all right with this?
Yes.
Does that sound, do you feel more confident in your approach for your second assignment?
Yes, I think I just need to plan it and begin reading, and then see, once I make a plan, I could send it to you by email.
Yes, send me a plan, and Dee, if you want to as well, Cynthia, if you have a plan and you want me to have a look at it. I think what's essential is that you contextualize what you're saying into why you're looking at it from an ethical perspective, right? That there are ethical questions, and these are because the sort of moral philosophy gives us a framework by which we want to look at specific ways to understand how we want to support young children in classrooms to have a certain type of education that will help them to become certain kinds of people that we think are ideal or more desirable, right? So those theories are suggesting that this is the ideal, okay? This is what is desirable. And what you want to try and do is engage with the journal article that you're looking at that is trying to highlight some of those ideas, those notions, and say what your response would be to that, and how you would respond would have to employ, or you'd have to apply certain principles, objections, or supporting points which you can help inform yourself by your further reading. And these chapters can help in that. If you've taken a journal article, come back to these chapters and see how you can relate your response to what is being said in terms of what is the ideal that's being presented here, and how is that informed? Does it correspond to a utilitarian perspective? And what does that mean about the experiences that we're discussing that children will have in an educational environment? All the while, remember that what you're trying to do is relate it back to education and talk about the real issues. So in one respect, you are trying to establish that you understand the ideological, or not ideological, the ideal theory, pardon me, the ideal theory approach. And on the other, you're saying, what does this mean in real terms? Is it helpful to us in shaping the way that we can imagine teaching and learning taking place in the classroom, in schools? Or is it actually presenting a problem that we need to be able to discuss and be more aware of? Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
So try to have in the back of your mind that the reason that we're looking at the theory is because these ideas are trying to shape a perspective that is trying to promote the ideal way of helping us in education to think about the curriculum, think about learning strategies and activities that help individuals to flourish, but be better persons and members of society. After all, that's what education is trying to do, right? So how we go about trying to do that is informed by these theoretical perspectives. And our objections might be also informed by principles that are moral, principles, and have an ethical aspect to it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Remember those sort of key principles of freedom and autonomy. Think about the rights discourse. Some others might come in and say, well, from a rights perspective, there might be an objection to this. Do you see what I'm trying to and that touches on some of the sessions that we've had already. How do education, those in education, serve the best interests of individual children in their classroom and the whole group of children in the classroom? And that can help you think about ways in which you can apply the theory and think, well, does that work? Is it manageable? Is that enough? Is there something more that needs to be done? Or is there a problem in the suggestion of what is being proposed in what I'm reading, that I can imagine that there are potential problems here? And then you'd have to sort of explain what those are.
Okay, so
Go on.
from what I understand, with both articles, we have to pick out the key points, question why they're saying this, and then relate it to the ethical theory, but then use our research on actual practice to give it extra body. Does that make sense?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is showing to the reader that there are these ideas, these approaches of thinking about education that could be a way of shedding more light or presenting more food for thought, if you like, or problems in the classroom. Or you know, so I think, and I'm trying to sort of think of both potential students who, one might look at a journal article and say, oh, I really want to look at this for my second analytical commentary. And another might think, I'll look at this chapter from Schaefer-Landau and use that as my main source. So
yeah,
try to break down what is being said and what are the key principles that are informing what is being sort of presented. So if it's about happiness being all that matters, then there are certain principles that inform why that is, okay, based on that theoretical position. If it is an argument about why character education should be important for people in schools to think about helping with, I don't know, deviant behavior, for example, then you want to look at how they're presenting the arguments, what are the principles that you can draw from that are informing the arguments that they're presenting. So think about what is it that they're claiming, what are the claims here, what's important, how is the individual seeing, what is it that they're suggesting needs to be focused on that will help to support the individual and potentially society, has an impact on society, and then what are the implications then for the classroom teacher and for young people learning about these approaches of seeing themselves in a certain way and applying themselves in a particular way to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what you're saying is not incorrect. It's a good way to think of reminding yourself of the layers of how you're going to sort of, you could say deconstruct or just unpick is maybe my way of putting it, what it is that you're reading and mapping that to the theory that you've looked at and say, okay, this can be described as a very utilitarian approach, or maybe this is more of a Kantian perspective. Because what we're being urged to think about is doing the right thing, irrespective of what, you know, parents might want for their children, because there is a sort of ulterior motive here of what is really in everyone's best interest.
Mm.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's trying to apply the ideas to theory and to practice. And the practice element, the best way I can suggest that you apply this is to try and imagine what it might look like in a real setting, to test out those ideas.
Yeah.
And you can relate that to maybe examples that are in, you know, your first assignment, or maybe in other examples of you know, that have been posted up on Moodle.
Okay.
So once you get reading and you've decided which article or which chapter it is that you want to use, you can then start to unpick it and then map it across to thinking about theory, if it's from a journal article, or what the theory suggests from the sort of ethical theoretical perspective, and then how this applies in practice.
Yeah.
What I might try and do is, if I stop sharing for a moment, I did used to have, let me think, what's the best way to do this? I will try, so you can either talk amongst yourselves or give me a moment to find something here. I'll go into the archives maybe. hold on. Are there any questions? So let me ask you, Dina hasn't quite got to her second assignment yet, which is fine. Khadija, have you got to your second assignment?
No, not yet.
And Cynthia? Has she left us?
No, she's there.
Oh. Cynthia?
She's on mute.
Oh. Be nice to hear from you, Cynthia. I'm just quickly trying to get up. Let me find this one. Okay. Trying to get something up without actually revealing. Okay. Okay, so this will be interesting, I hope. This assignment, I'm going to share an assignment for you to view. Oh no, I don't want to end the meeting. Sorry, beg your pardon, I wanted to share the screen. There we go. And I'm just mindful that this is being recorded, but can you see the screen?
Yeah.
So this one is looking at the critique of the literature on happiness, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's the introduction. This assignment got 62, I'm just telling you now, okay? So they're introducing the particular perspectives. Gert Biester's very good read if you can see the, I think I did scan and put some of his work on Moodle. But they see how they've got the sources there. The aim of education has been up for discussion for hundreds of years. Well, yeah, okay. And researchers and educators are still arguing what is the best way to teach and measure education. So that's taken from Biester. Biester supported by Kantian views and argued that while some schools place more emphasis on qualification, he believed that subjectifications could be an intrinsic element of all education. And then they're going on to say that research has shown that teaching happiness is, measured in, it can be measured in certain ways, and there's research that helps to support that. All right. And then it's looking at the notion of happiness, whose happiness we're looking at. Mentions Nodding. She's a care ethicist. She is also in your reading list. Has supported the view that happiness should be something that supports aims in education, and that it is something that promotes good education, right?
Yeah.
And then there's an attempt here to also define what we mean by good education and happiness. I may not be doing much justice to reading this because I'm trying to sort of skim through as I show you. So there's a sort of contextualization of why happiness has been discussed, where it's coming from, and how we might understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some reference to the way happiness has been understood and the claims that have been made about happiness as a condition, and concepts that relate to happiness. Without deviating too much into different disciplines, you can give a nod to or acknowledge different approaches to understanding what happiness means. From, there's a cognitive sort of mention there of how it's understood.
Okay.
Okay, and it relates then to the hedonistic theory. So here the student is showing that they've done their reading, they're trying to understand different ways of explaining what happiness is, how it's understood, and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly you need to have some sort of term of reference in order to be able to help you apply that to practice, but see also if the arguments that are presented help to give more clarity. Remember, clarity is always important, and meaning, which is also important, to what is understood. And that way you can decide whether in application it works.
Yeah.
If we understand it in a particular way, right, then, and it means something to us because we think that it helps, then we can imagine how it might be applied. And that's where you can reason through the arguments that have been presented, and through your own reasoning, support or object to what is being claimed, because the claim is either being reinforced and supported well with the arguments presented, so that it helps you to imagine how it might look in a classroom or in a school setting, and it seems to you a reasonable way of looking at education and applying that ethical perspective. Or if you find that it's not quite clear, or it doesn't help you to understand the value of using this approach, then that is an objection you have, and you need to bring in your reading from elsewhere to support your arguments that would object to those positions that are presented, that definition and the meanings that are drawn from what has been explained and argued. Does that help?
Yeah. It does. Can I see the reference list?
Okay, let me see what they've drawn. Oh, look, here we go.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many references do we have to use?
Well, it's sort of like, it's a kind of subjective way of, I mean, if you only have 2 references, that would look very minimalist to me and not quite sufficient. If you have a number of references like this student, it could be that you're paraphrasing and you're drawing on your reading without actually giving direct references, but you still have to include them in your references. So your list is quite impressive, right?
Yeah.
Potentially you could have quite a lot. But that doesn't mean to say that if you have less than 20, that it's not a good assignment. If you have about if this is 1800 words and you've got about 10 references, that's not bad. You might even have 8 or 9, but I mean that's the see, it goes on.
Wow.
But the important thing here is, and this is what I want to emphasize, is that you have wider reading that you're drawing on. So when you are trying to engage with the claims that are being made, the assumptions that the author has, or the sort of understanding of the definition that the author presents and then uses to make the case for the arguments that they provide to support their claims. If you are in agreement with them, you would want to show how you have agreed with them, not just by accepting their view, but also drawing on the views of others and what others have written to help support your position. And that gives more credibility, more kudos to you. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to persuade your reader that actually what the author is saying is not believable, isn't realistic, or even if it is very impressive, you want to impress upon your reader that you're not just taken in by what that author is saying, but you have reasons to believe from your wider reading that can support why it is and how it is that you either support or have some reservations about what is being presented in the main article. Okay?
Yeah.
So if your bibliography isn't 2 sides of A4, don't panic. But try not to have 2 or 3 references, because that would show that you haven't really engaged too far from what you've actually read.
Yeah.
So the evidence that you would show to support your response is important, just as important as how you understand the main text and the arguments that have been presented in the main text.
Okay.
Is this helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you feeling a bit more confident, happier with the assignment?
Yeah, I think I'm quite. I've got my plan in my head. I know what I have to do in terms of before I can actually start. I mean, I want to finish off all my reading, then choose my articles, then use the articles, pick them out and put them in, use your table, and then I'm going to go from there. So I've got my road.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear. And I think Cynthia's left us, but Khadija, are you okay?
Yes, I'm good.
Is that similar? Are you similar sort of to Didi, that you're happy with now how you're going to approach your assignments?
Yes, much more clear.
Well, that's good to hear, and that's the main aim of this session, is hopefully to give you more clarity and to help give you more confidence in your approach. Okay, well, hopefully this recording will make some sense as well. When I don't ever like hearing my voice when it's recorded or seeing myself on camera, but I'm trying to overcome those sort of reservations I have. But hopefully that this recording will be helpful. I'm mindful that I've just recorded what I've said as well, so that'll be entertaining. But in the main, I mean, just think of your two assignments as not being too dissimilar in the approach, but the way that you, the perspective that you start, your starting point will be different.
Okay.
Is that helpful? So one, the starting point is looking at the micro, yes, the particular example, and working your way out to thinking about what is this linking to in terms of theory? How can I link this to theory? And how do the arguments work? And what are the proposals or suggestions, the assumptions that are being made? What are the claims and the arguments that are in the body of the article that I'm looking at, which gives an example of what's happening in education currently that's being discussed? And how can that link to the theories that I've been looking at, a particular theory I want to focus on? And so are these examples of what's happening in education helpful for us to assess what is good or bad or could be better, right, in practice based on what we know from a theoretical perspective? And then in your second assignment, you're looking at theoretical understanding and perspectives that claim what is best or good, let's put it that way, and in the best interest of the individual and society, and then think about how does this work in the classroom and in practice? Is it a good way to imagine good practice, good teaching and learning? Would it help us to understand what is in the best interests of individuals and the wider society? If education is a good, right, does this have any intrinsic or extrinsic value? And if so, how? So then you would draw on secondary reading and examples that would help to support the position that you take in response to the article or chapter that you are analysing. Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to reading your assignments. Okay. Well, in the meantime, if you do have an outline and you want me to have a look at it, I'm more than happy to.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, unless there's any other questions, shall I let you go away and think about what we've discussed and start looking for your sources?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today.
No worries. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I hope you found the session helpful, and good luck with your assignments.
Thank you.
Leah.
All right. Take care.
You
Take
too.
care.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.